All right, a good Vach Shavua Tov. Welcome to all the participants in the shiur today, especially to our guest speaker, Shmuel Khoshkerman. Shlita, it's very special to have you back, not personally in our shul, but at least virtually with our shul and our members. In a minute, I'm going to hand you over to Rabbi Isaacs, who will do a proper introduction. But I am so grateful that you have joined us this morning and shared with us a little bit of Torah, a little bit of Halacha on Minyana Diyoma, topics that are relevant to the current situation, Corona. This morning's shiur is part of a Zoom series. Each week, we will be featuring a different speaker, and I'll be sharing that on the screen in a moment. But if you take a look at your screen, you will see we have a list, and it's on our shul's website, of all the speakers. We start with Rav Hershel Schachter. Last week, Dr. Dana Fishkin. Next week, Dr. Norman Blumenthal, please God, and Rav Meir Goldvich, and onward. We are very much looking forward to this morning's shiur, and I now turn you over to Rabbi Isaacs to make the hakdama.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining. Many of you are really familiar with Rabbi Khoshkerman, my father-in-law. I was looking. I just want to give a very brief bio before we get started. No one wants to hear me. Rabbi Khoshkerman graduated from the Yisrael, received rabbinic ordination from the Yisrael. Additionally, he's a Moel, a Shochet, a Sofer, and he is also a tremendous Baal Mechaber. He wrote Sfarim, more than one Sfarim. I'm about to get to that in a second. I was looking for a way to connect this to our Parsha. And I actually, I was scratching my head a little bit, but until I realized I have to not get too far past the first pasuk. The pasuk tells us, Ela Toldot Noach, and if you read the pasuk, it seems like the Torah spaced out for a second. The Torah says, Noach ish tzaddik, and all the commentaries say, Tamim haya b'dorotav. That's not that's not the offspring of Noach. And from here we learn that the main offspring of every individual is not actually his physical descendants, but rather the Torah and the Ma'asim Tovim that he brings to the world. And with that, I would like to just wanted to pitch every time I join the family, it's very clear to me that the Iker offspring and the unbelievable mind that my father has is very much reflected in his unbelievable sefer, which is literally a guide for so many Rabbanim that I personally know, and especially myself. I'm extremely biased, and with no further ado, Chavod, Rabbi.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, rabbis, for the beautiful introduction. We know that we are living in a time of a pandemic. And we should also understand that this pandemic is not the first pandemic happened to the world and to Klal Israel. The many pandemics happened through the generations, and a lot of people dealt with this many times. They dealt with this many times, and there are different ways of dealing with it. One of the pandemics that happened in the recent years was in Baghdad, in Iraq. And at the time of Rabbi Ishchai writes that this pandemic that happened to Jews and to people in Baghdad, a lot of people died. And he explains what was behind people dying. Obviously, the virus itself is a sakana, is dangerous, but he also writes something very interesting. He says that a lot of people died because of fear. And he says if people wouldn't have fear and they just would deal with the virus itself, they would have much more aslacha, much more success with dealing with it, rather than being fearful and scared and don't know what are they doing. Therefore, he says that we have to be focused of the virus itself. What are the things that we can do? what are the doctors and professionals are telling us to do. We have to listen, obviously, according to Halacha, we have to listen to the professionals. And also at the same time, there's a lot of halachic implications that we need to be aware of. There's a Gemara, Masechet Baba Kama, Daf Samech Amud Bet. The Gemara tells us, Tanu Rabbanan, Dever Ba'ir Kanes Raglecha. So the Gemara says, when there is a dever, a pandemic, go inside, right? We know, see from this Gemara, that what the professionals are telling us today, that people need to quarantine and stay in, don't get out, don't be in the streets. Chazal already knew that 2,500 years ago, that when there is a pandemic, stay inside. There's also a very interesting Gemara. The Gemara tells us that Dever Ba'ir al Yahalech Adam be'emsa aderech. Why? Mipnei shemalach hamavet mahalech be'emsa aderachim. So when there is a pandemic in the city, don't walk in the middle, right? Why? Mipnei shemalach hamavet mahalech be'emsa aderachim, because the malach hamavet are in the middle of the street. So what does this Gemara means? There's a very interesting Teshuvot Rashbash. The Teshuvot Rashbash was written almost 1,000 years ago. He says, it's a very beautiful touch-up on this Gemara. It says that when people are healthy, they always eat in a way that is healthy, which means that they eat meat, but they don't exaggerate of eating meat. They eat certain foods, but they don't exaggerate of eating whatever kind of food they want to eat. Or they do certain things, they don't exaggerate, they are always be'emsa aderech, which is what Rambam tells us, that we always should be in the middle of the road. So Rashbai says, when there is a dever ba'ir, when there is a pandemic, you should not be in the middle of it. You have to go totally to the other side. You have to totally take the more strict side, that you shouldn't do certain things at all. You shouldn't eat certain foods at all. Shouldn't go certain places at all. Not to be in the middle of the road. To be totally strictly the other side of the road. And therefore, the Rashbash is telling us from this Gemara that when there's a dever ba'ir, right? Ali alech be'emsa aderech. Be'emsa aderech means don't follow that idea of the Rambam says you always should be emsa'i, should be in the middle of the road, should be totally the other side, because we have to be machmir of what we need to do. There's also very interesting Gemara, Masechet Ketubot. The Gemara tells us that, again, the reason I'm bringing this Gemarot is to show that Chachamim, they already knew when there is a pandemic, what are we supposed to do? One of the things the Gemara tells us, Masechet Ketubot, that when there was a pandemic, Rabbi Yochanan says, be careful of the flies, because flies are the one transfers viruses to different people. Make sure that stay away from flies. Rabbi Zira says, be careful of bringing machalat derech avir. Make sure that this virus doesn't come through the air. Make sure that your air are clean. Rav Ami and Rav Asi, they said, make sure that the food that you eat, the foods are clean, because the virus could come also through eating food. Rabbi Lazar says, be careful not to get close to people, because through that, the virus, the pandemic could go through. You see from all this Gemarot that what we hearing today is not a chidush, is not something that they just came out with it. We knew that many, many years ago, and the people through the generations. I just read a book recently that how many pandemics Klal Israel faced with, and how did they go through it, and what did they do? And each one of them, they had the advices of the Chazal, and obviously the advice of the doctors and professionals, which we need to listen and follow the guidance. Now I want to talk about a few she'elot, questions that we have this pandemic brought to us, and every Rav had to deal with them. One of the questions that we got was, is one allowed to have minyanim through video, Zoom, telephone, and what about answering amen? Let's say you are standing in a room and you are davening by yourself at home, and you have obviously you have a good reason not to come to shul, and you want to be participating with the minyan. At the minyan, either they have a minyan or there's no minyan. If there is a minyan in one place and you are participating with the Zoom with that minyan, there are some poskim hold that you are considered part of that minyan, and the tefillah is considered tefillah b'tzibur. Therefore, you are allowed to do that. But what about answering? Because we know the Halacha tells us one is not allowed to answer amen, right? If let's say you are listening to a video of a wedding, and in the wedding they send Sheva Berachot, right? Are you allowed to answer amen through the video or recording that you have? The lot of poskim hold you are not allowed to answer amen because it's not live. But if it is alive, if it's live, that you are listening to a tefillah, you're listening to Chazarat Hashas live, then you are allowed to answer amen. And that's the halacha. Therefore, if somebody is staying home and listening to the Zoom, it could be the machloket, it's considered tefillah b'tzibur or not bad. At least if you're listening live, you are allowed to answer amen, and that by itself is a very important part of participating. Now, we know that a lot of shuls, they have minyanim inside and minyanim outside. Now, the minyanim outside, some of them are attached to the shul. Like by us, we have windows. We build something outside next to the window, and people davening inside and people davening outside. Now, obviously, those that are davening outside, if there is a window, they see each other, they are considered part of the minyan. But there's one interesting shayla that somebody once asked, if there is a kohen standing outside, right, and there's no 10 people outside, there's maybe 7, 8 people outside, and there's 20, 30, 40, 50 people inside. Is the kohen allowed to go to Dukhan outside, or he has to come inside in order to be part of the Nesiyat Kapayim, the part of going to Dukhan? The halacha is like this. If you see each other, they are considered part of a minyan, and let's say somebody has to say Kaddish outside, right? Does he have to come inside to say Kaddish? There's no minyan outside. The halacha is, if you see each other, if the sibur inside and the sibur outside see each other, they could participate. They consider one minyan, and therefore the kohen is allowed to go to Dukhan outside, doesn't have to come inside. And also, it doesn't, the person says Kaddish, you could say outside, even though there is no minyan outside, as long as they see each other, the sibur inside and outside, they see each other, they could participate in the same minyan, and that's considered the same thing. Another question is, we know that this pandemic, this coronavirus of COVID-19, causes people to lose their taste and their smell. What about the person eats food, that they have to eat food, but they don't taste it? Can they make a baracha? Because if you don't have, if you have no enjoyment, don't enjoy yourself from the food, is that good enough? But you're satisfied. Is that good enough reason for you to make a baracha? There's a machloket ben poskim, Rosh Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan. When you make a baracha, you need anaat gerono or anaat bitno. When you make a baracha, you need to taste. You have to. You feel it. You feel the enjoyment of the food. You feel the sweetness of the food. You feel that how good the food is, and that's why you make baracha. Or the reason is that you're satisfied. You get satisfied, and because of that, you make a baracha. There's an interesting, very interesting. When I saw that, I was very, very amazed. Chida was asked this question at the time of a pandemic that happened to him. The Sefer Shiurei Baracha from Chida, Rabbi Chaim Yosef David Azulai, he says that this question was posted to him at the time of a pandemic that happened. That somebody asked him, I can't taste food, can I make a baracha? So the Chida says that if the Lema'aseh be paskin, that as long as you get satisfied from the food, even though you don't taste the food, you still have to make the baracha. And that's the halacha. If you are eating the food, and end of the day you are filled up, you are not hungry anymore, and you have the enjoyment of the food inside you, that by itself makes you to make a baracha, even though you don't taste anything. But the real she'ela would be, what would you do on Motzei Shabbat when you have to make Avdalah? Part of the Avdalah is Besamim. Then when you don't smell the Besamim, do you make the Beracha or you don't make the Beracha? So that has to do, the Beracha or the Halacha Boreh Minei Besamim has to do with smelling. If you don't smell, you don't make a Beracha. Even though that the part of the mitzvah of Avdalah is Boreh Minei Besamim, but if you don't smell them, you cannot make that Beracha. Therefore, Motzei Shabbat, if a person, Rahman has that COVID and cannot smell anything, then they should be Yotze with somebody else with the Beracha Boreh Minei Besamim, but you cannot make the Beracha by yourself because of that. Another question that came out is that somebody that had this COVID and they recovered, Baruch Hashem, now they come to Shul. Should they make Birkat HaGomel? We know that somebody is sick, makes a Birkat HaGomel. Now, that consider a chole sheyesh bo sakana, that you make the Birkat HaGomel or you don't make Birkat HaGomel. Obviously, those that they were in sakana, those that they mamash in the hospital and all that you have to make a Birkat HaGomel. But what about those that they just stay in bed for a few days, stay in bed for a week or so, and they got better? Do they make a Beracha Birkat HaGomel or not? That is a machloket mechaber and Rema, which would be the machloket Ashkenazim and Sephardim, how to deal with this she'ela. According to mechaber, according to Maran, a person makes the Beracha Birkat HaGomel if you stay in bed for 3 days. Right? It doesn't matter why you stay in bed. If a person even is not the chole, the sickness is not mesukan, is not sakana, but if you stay in bed for 3 days, you make a Birkat HaGomel. Therefore, according to this mechaber, if a person has this sickness, stayed in bed and took whatever they recommended it for him to take, he didn't go to the hospital, he never was in a sakana mode, never was mesukan, according to mechaber, if you recovered and you come out, you have to make Birkat HaGomel. According to Rema, the only time you make Birkat HaGomel, only if you are in sakana. If you had a sakana nefashot by you, if something happened, and there was a person, Rahman was in a hospital, and they had to give him the oxygen, and because of that, he has to stay in hospital for a few days. When you come out, then you have to make Birkat HaGomel. But if you just stayed home, according to Rema, you shouldn't make Birkat HaGomel. But there are some poskim say, if you want to be machmir, you should be yotzer with somebody else, but you shouldn't make the Birkat HaGomel yourself, because you never were in the state of sakana. Therefore, it's machloket Ashkenazim and Sephardim, and each one have to deal with it accordingly. The other she'ela is, that there are different of opinions. Should you wear mask outside or should you wear mask only inside? There are people machmir, they wear outside also. There are people machmir that they wear gloves outside too. And people are not the maker, they only wear inside. Now, each one have their own rights. They have to talk to their doctor, whatever is appropriate for them to do, they should do. Now, the question is, what do you do on Shabbat? On Shabbat, are you allowed to walk outside with a mask or gloves in a place there is no eruv, right? Is that considered carrying or is not considered carrying? Some people want to say that mask is considered a levush. It's considered like a part of your clothing. And when you put a mask on, that's considered your clothing, and we could walk outside. Some people say that really the mask doesn't make it's not a big deal. It doesn't really bother anybody, and it's not considered a real refuah, and therefore you shouldn't walk outside with it. So I wanted to bring a raya from sunglasses. With people, are you allowed to wear sunglasses outside in the street without a roof? The sunglasses really is not a refuah, but it helps you. It helps your eyes, and you are more comfortable. Therefore, the masveh, the mask, when you wear them, even though that might help, might not help, but because it is effective and it helps you, that's considered a part of a refuah, and therefore one is allowed to go outside with the mask, and it's not a problem. The same thing with gloves. Gloves also, we know gloves is not only in the Gabbay. This is gloves during winter. People that they have to wear gloves, they want to wear gloves, they are allowed to do that. The reason that some people don't, because it's possible it might take it out. Now, there are some poskim hold that people shouldn't wear masks outside because if they want to clean their nose, they want to talk to somebody or they need to eat, they have to take it down. And the Gezerat Chazal might apply that if you take them down, you might carry for Arba Amot, the Shuta Rabin might carry 4 Amot outside. So therefore, they kind of, what people normally do, they just put it down under their cheek. They don't really take it out completely. What about those that they don't cover their nose and mouth, they just put it under their cheek, like they just leave it there. That's not considered refuah. The answer to that is because that's considered derech levush shelo kederech. Because it's shelo kederech, but still is a levush, there still is not a problem to walk outside with them. The other question is using soap on Shabbat. We know that one of the things that we need, that they recommend, the professionals recommend, is to wash our hand constantly, and using soap on Shabbat, and especially was on Yom Kippur, also the same question came up, are you allowed to use soap on Shabbat? We know there is a machloket between Rav Moshe Feinstein and Rav Eliashib. Rav Moshe Feinstein holds that using, I'm not talking about the soap bar, we're talking about the liquid soaps. There are different types of liquid soaps. Liquid soaps there are some that they are heavy, some of them are very liquidy. The ones that are still is not bar, but still is heavy, and when it comes down, you have to rub them. Rav Moshe Feinstein held that you should not use them on Shabbat. Rav Eliashib held that you are allowed to use it on Shabbat. That goes to the category of liquid soap. The halacha be paskin that you are allowed to use those type of soaps, and it's not a problem. For sure, you could use the ones that are liquidy, like water comes out, those that is no she'elah to use. Now, the real question is, what about if a person doesn't have a soap, right? You are in a situation, there's no soap, there's no liquid soap. The only soap is available is bar soaps. Are you allowed to use that on Shabbat? We know that the minhag Israelis, we don't use bar soap on Shabbat because of memareyach. When you're taking a layer out, and that considered a memareyach, and the minhag is not to use it. There's a very interesting teshuvah from Rav Ovadia Yosef in Yabia Omer that says you are allowed to use the soap, bar soap on Shabbat because it's not being the raya from the Rambam that is not considered a memareyach. Now, the minhag is not like that. People, nobody uses bar soap on Shabbat, but if there is a pandemic and people that are mamash in a situation, they have nothing else and they need to clean their hand because of the refuah, because of the sakana, you could rely on the Pesach of Rav Ovadia, and if you want to use it, yesh la'im al-man lismoch, but the person should try as much as possible to find a liquid soap, either is the ones that are heavy, the more liquidy, either one is fine to be used. The question that I'm sure a lot of rabbis were faced with, if you are you're working as a doctor or as a nurse, and you really wanted to quit your job because you don't want to be in the situation that you're dealing with corona patients. Are you allowed to drop your job? Are you allowed to quit your job, or you have to keep on going and work and put yourself in somewhat of a sakana, of a danger, or you could say, I don't want to do that. I want to leave. I want to quit my job, and I really don't want to have to deal with this. The same question, by the way, also applies to Chevra Kadisha. The Chevra Kadisha that people deal with dead people, can they say also the same thing? I don't want to deal with the COVID patients. I don't want to put myself on sakana because I have to do tahara. They don't want to deal with that. Can they say that I'm quitting my job and I don't want to deal with that? They both are the same she'elah. I tell you, this she'ela was divided. A lot of rabbanim are divided on this she'ela. Some say that they could do that. Some say they cannot do that. Some say that it's their duty to take care of the sick people. Some say the duty of Chevra Kadisha is to deal with people that passed away. They have to deal with it. And I heard from Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky Shlita that he said that they should not quit their job. They should stay with their job because they have to obviously they have to take care of themselves. They have to protect themselves as much as possible. Whatever needs to be done, and they should continue doing what they're doing. They're doing a tremendous service to people. They're doing a tremendous service to people that they need to be buried, and the mitzvah they're doing is unmeasurable. That how much mitzvah they have in their hand. Therefore, again, I can't talk for everybody, but there are poskim hold that they should do it. I told my people that if they are completely protected, they should do whatever needs to be done, and they should keep on working as long as they are completely and doing whatever they need to do to protect themselves. There's another interesting she'ela that came out was a Kohen. A Kohen that, we know that Kohen is allowed to metameh, to become tameh, to go to cemetery, as long as only 7 family members died. More than that, a Kohen is not allowed to be involved with the met or go to the cemetery. The she'ela was like this. It was a Kohen that his wife died, and they wanted to take her to Eretz Israel in a plane, in a private plane. He had one plane and just wanted to take his wife. And he wanted to go with it, and he was allowed to go with it. Now they asked him, can you take another dead body with you? You have a private plane, take another one with you. Is he allowed to be in the plane? Because it's only allowed to be for his wife. He's not allowed to be with another dead body. Is that considered the extra thing that is not allowed to be part of that? So the halacha is that once you are obviously you are not allowed to do in the normal situation, but because there is a machloket poskim that could he be part of extra thing, extra tum'ah, would it validate him? Then the halacha is allowed to do that. Is allowed to take another dead body with him and doing a mitzvah to take another body to be buried in Eretz Yisrael. It's not a problem. The other question I'm sure a lot of people had to deal with it during this pandemic was weddings. The weddings that we know, the Halacha tells the Shulchan Aruch Paskin clearly that in order to say Birkat Nisuin Rusin, you need 10 people. Without the minyan, you are not allowed to have Birkat Nisuin and the Sheh Baruchot and the Chuppah. So, and what do you do now? There are a lot of, unfortunately, a lot of weddings was done without a minyan. They couldn't get a minyan. It was not in their power to get a minyan. What do you do if the Chatan V'Kala, they want to get married? There's twofold questions here. One, should they get married? Or second question is, maybe they should wait. Maybe they shouldn't get married if they can't get a minyan, or should wait for a time to get it to be a better situation, better timing, to get more people to participate in a wedding. The second question, that should they wait, that I don't have, and I'm sure that also was brought down to a lot of rabbis. Again, depends on the situation and how should be done. But Lema'aseh, we say that shouldn't wait. It's a mitzvah. Chatan Kala, they need to get married, and they should get married together. They shouldn't wait for a better, when their timing will be months, we don't know. Instead having a minyan, what should we do about that? The halacha is you cannot have a minyan. If you don't have a minyan, you don't make the beracha. But also the Gemara tells us, kalla belo chuppah is asur, kalla belo beracha is asur. The answer is that as long as you have the chuppah, you make the chuppah, without the beracha, berachot enon ma'akevot. The beracha does not ma'akev. You could have a chuppah without the beracha, and you be part of they could make the wedding. Now, what it is, There's two ways you could deal with that. Either you do that without the baracha, or you could have people standing outside like a tefillah. If people could see each other, they are not under the same roof. Let's say the wedding's inside the shul, and people are standing outside, the door is open, they don't want to walk inside. As long as some part of the sibur inside sees the people outside, they could be mistarev and they could make it to a minyan, and then they could make the barachot. That's possibility. That's one possibility that we tried. We told a lot of places that that's the way they tried to do, and they were successful of doing it. Now, there's a few Choshen Mishpat she'elot that came out. It's also very interesting she'elot. One she'elah that we dealt with was, what about if a person has the business, he rented a storefront or office or whatever, and he pays $1,000, $2,000 a month for a rent, and the government asks them to shut it down. They can't. The only things that the only businesses could be open, essential businesses, which is food, and this person is a clothing business. Can he not pay rent, or the rent has nothing to do with it? Can he say, listen, what do you want me to do? The government asked me to shut down my business, and there's nothing I can do. I don't want to pay. You know that the Gemara tells us, if there is a Magefa ba'olam, right? Makat Medina. Gemara says Makat Medina is patur. It doesn't have to pay. The question is pandemic considered a Makat Medina? Is that considered something that affects everybody or no? Really the she'elah is like this. If you have a situation like that, right? If a person has an office or a storefront that he cannot open, but he could do other things with it. Maybe he could go and do bookkeeping, or he could do other things that he could sell online. There's a lot of other things a person can do, could use his space for other types of businesses, not necessarily needs to be open. Then in that situation, he has to pay his rent. But if a person says there is nothing I can do, then my business is totally and completely is for outside people. If I cannot be open, there is nothing I can make. Lemaaseh, we say that it's considered Makat Medina, right? We say that that's considered something that affects the whole Medina, the whole country, and there is a room. There's room there again. They have to, if the landlord is not happy, they have to go to Din Torah. But there is room to be discussed that maybe the person shouldn't pay his rent. But again, I can't make a law and rule for everyone. There is room for discussion in a bedin, and they have to ask the she'elat chacham what to do in that type of situation. There's also an interesting she'elah that came out. Somebody lost his job, and he wanted to do. He wanted to go and infect himself with coronavirus. This way, he has antibody, could go find a job, and he could be outside, and there's no problem. He then doesn't have to worry about that he's going to get infected, he's going to lose his job again. The she'elah was, can he purposely go outside and infect himself and get a coronavirus? And this way, he has antibody, and he could look for a job, and he has a proper parnasah, doesn't have to worry about anything. So we know that there's a big machloket in the Gemara and the Shonim and Achronim. Is a person allowed to machnis et asmo l'safek sakana? I can't say that this virus is considered total sakana, but lekol hapachot at least is considered safek sakana. It's a machloket. But l'sorech parnasa, a lot of poskim hold. The person is allowed to put himself in a safek sakana. But the problem with this is that a person that makes himself, putting himself into this, infecting purposely himself with this virus is not, and there was, a person is allowed to put himself in a sakana because of that sakana makes money. But when you infecting yourself, that corona does not give you a parnasa. What it is a vehicle to get a parnasa later. And that everybody holds that you are not allowed to do that. You cannot put yourself in the safek sakana or that device sakana of coronavirus in order to get a parnasa. And the same thing also, the question that I'm sure everybody that deal with this question, to pay the yeshivot, the play groups, Bet Yaakov, seminaries, the yeshivot in day schools, all kinds of tuitions that people had to deal with. Do you pay? Don't you pay? How much do you pay? That also depends on the situation. Is the school offering online classes, or the kids or the boys or girls are benefiting from what the school or their school or the yeshiva is offering, or they are not doing anything? It all depends. It's a lot of, it is impossible to give one question to this answer. Don't answer these questions because it's so broad. These questions are so broad, and each school and each teacher, each playgroup is different, and everyone has to deal with the situation that they are in. And there, if anybody has a she'ela, they could go always. They could go to the Torah, they could ask a she'ela, they could go to a proper Rav and discuss a she'ela. There's one more thing I'm going to say, then we'll close with that. There's an interesting, somebody once asked me, he said, is a person allowed to wear a costume, Purim time? Somebody asked me, is allowed to wear a costume? Says, I am a coronavirus guy. I'm sick with the corona. The question is that al tiftach pe Satan. Is one allowed to open himself to Satan? The answer to that question is one is not allowed to do that. When you do something like that, and you calling yourself, I'm sick with this, the Gemara Chazal tell us that the person should not bring that type of things on themselves. Should stay away from that. And the al tiftach pe Satan is also an important idea that Chachamim gave us, and one should stay away from that. Be'ezrat Hashem should help us. That Hashem, the Kodesh Baruch Hu should say, Dai letzarotenu, Dai letzarot of the Olam, and Dai letzarot of Klal Yisrael. And we should all share samachot, and we should be zocheh legeula shelema b'mira v'menu. Amen.
Khoshkerman, thank you so much. If I may, can I ask a follow-up question on one of your halacha? Very fascinating shir. The matter of the sunglasses as the raya for removing a mask.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, the sunglasses. So if I recall correctly, I think Rav Moshe was concerned about removing them, without an eruv in public. In other words, there's going to be a concern you can remove them. I think you were a nota lahakel to be lenient in that department. Does that depend upon how you hold about sunglasses? Was that your?
The original she'ela of sunglasses is that Shoel u'mashiv. Shoel u'mashiv says that Shemirat Shabbat Kelchata also passes like that. That when you wear sunglasses, if your eyes hurt, you cannot cover the sun. Sun hurts you very, very much. And the halacha is that you are allowed to wear it. But if you just wearing it as an onek, then I think you cannot wear it. But if you're wearing it for a refuah, because you can't be outside without sunglasses, then it's considered a part of a refuah, and therefore you could do it.
Thank you. And the other question is, I think you mentioned Shmuel Kamenetsky by the Chevra Kadisha. The Chevra Kadisha afforded some protection to engage in a semi-dangerous activity if there was a contagious disease. We dealt with this with our Chevra Kadisha at the CRC, deciding policies, and we actually purchased for our whole Chevra full bodysuits at the time, hundreds of dollars per each one, just to be extra careful. But my question was, with Shmuel's ruling about the Chevra Kadisha, was that because you're osek in a mitzvah, or because what was his rationale that it's permissible to do it?
First, you have to protect yourself 100%. You have to put whatever clothing you need to wear, but also it says shomer misalo edadara. If you protect yourself and you do what you need to do, that's not going to hurt you, because shomer misalo edadara. It doesn't say that you shouldn't do anything. Just rely on shomer misalo edadara. He said you should protect yourself. Some people, even with protection, they didn't want to do it. That he said with the protection, the shomer misalo edadara.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions they want to ask the Rav on presentation of otherwise. Well, we want to thank you very much for the shiur. It is recorded. We will send it out. It was really wonderful hosting you here at KCT. We thank you, and it's an honor, I must say, an honor to have your son-in-law and daughter here as a Rav and Rabbits in our community, continuing the beautiful Masarah that you have laid out and the example you've set for the community of Atlanta. They are blessed to have you, and we wish you success and good health and continued Harbatzas Torah for the Jewish community. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
All too.